Hola, awesome people, and welcome back to what might be my last Pokemon Sun and Moon discussion podcast video. Same as last time, I will not be covering anything to do with leaks or anything that's been done with the data mining. This will be all based on the official releases that have come out from Game Freak and the Pokemon Company. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. Now the first thing I want to cover is a little amendment to my last podcast. I mentioned in the last podcast about the apparent secret thing that the starter evolutions had with Rockruff. Apparently that was a mistranslation of Korokoro and it wasn't made apparent to me until quite recently. So my bad, didn't realize that was a mistranslation until recently. So there's nothing special outside of the starter Pokemon at all. Just want to make that very clear. But that's my only amendment. Anyways, this podcast is going to focus mainly on all the features that have come out for Pokemon Sun and Moon that we're currently aware of, and a few other things as well that I didn't get a chance to cover in the last podcast because I just ran out of time. Anyways, let's start off with the Ash Greninja that is coming to Pokemon Sun and Moon. So for those of you who are not aware, you can get the Ash Greninja through the Pokemon Sun and Moon special demo version. So what you can do is you play through the first part of the demo, and then after that you have the option to transfer your Ash Greninja to your official copy of Pokemon Sun and Moon when that comes out on 18th of November or the week after, whatever that is for the UK players. So you'll be able to do that. And what will also come with is this new ability, Battle Bond. Battle Bond works very similar to how Moxie works, or Soul Heart from Magina, if you want to work it that way as well. And not only that, it allows it to transform into its Ash Greninja form. So basically, if you didn't kind of get what I was getting at there, once you knock out a Pokemon with your Greninja, you'll be able to transform into Ash Greninja, which will get a substantial amount of stat boost. Not only that, Water Shuriken will also do more damage in Ash Greninja form. And yes, English is not going to be happening tonight. Topped off as well in regards to Water Shuriken is now a special orientated move. It was originally physical based in Pokemon X and Y and Oris. It is now special, which makes it one of the few special priority moves on the top of like Vacuum Wave and maybe a few others that are quite scarce that I can't think of them. But anyways, we now have a new special base priority move, which is pretty cool. And not only that, it does make Greninja a little bit scary because we see both physical orientated and special orientated Ash Greninjas, which means, yeah, we're going to be seeing more priority special based Greninjas. However, there is a little but to this. If people want the extra stab, they'll go Proton, which is its hidden ability. However, if they want the Ash Greninja, they will need to give up Proton to do Battle Bond, topped off with the fact they need to take out a Pokemon to even get Ash Greninja. So there's a bit of a pro and con here. Do we take the initial boost in power of Proton ability, or do they sack it and hope for a kill? So I guess that's where the whole Water Shuriken being special base could be quite handy, because it means you can swap a Greninja into any Pokemon that is on the low health, go for the Water Shuriken, take out that Pokemon, and go for the transformation. So there's probably a good chance that in the Uber tiers for the Smogon format, there is a good chance we might see an increase of Endeavor Pokemon, topped off with like then swapping into the Greninja, going for the Water Shuriken, if they don't swap out, of course, getting the transformation. In regards to VGC, I do believe this thing is banned because it is being considered a mythical Pokemon due to how high its stats are. So that's kind of an indicator just how good this Ash Greninja might possibly be. So big confirmation why Greninja is in the Uber tier in Smogon. If it wasn't Uber by now, it definitely will be Uber in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Let's just face it. Its ability alone will put it up in Uber, similar to how Blaziken is up in Uber with Speed Boost. However, I did kind of prove that without Speed Boost, Blaziken is quite good in Trick Room. So there was no other really main things I need to really pick up about Greninja. I will say this though, if you do transfer it from Pokemon Sun and Moon demo, it will be level 37. And the other thing I was going to mention was there's a good chance that the Battle Bond ability will be Greninja's second normal ability. So that would mean if you have a Torrent to Greninja over on your Pokemon X and Y or Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, when you do transfer it over to Pokemon Sun and Moon, in January 14th I do believe Pokebank comes out. Once that's happened, you should be able to use the ability capsule, transfer your Torrent Greninja into a Battle Bond Greninja. I will have to point out though, that is a speculation, so take it with a grain of salt. other than that, I have no idea if this is going to be an exclusive Greninja with Battle Bond, or if any Greninja will be able to get Battle Bond if they do make it a normal ability, or they're going to change Proton to like a normal ability. I have no idea. So as I said, take it with a grain of salt. That was a speculation on my part. But it's still pretty cool that we now have like a starter Pokemon who has a second ability outside of like Torrent, Overgrow, and the Blaze ability, which all starter Pokemon get. This is just like mind-boggling in a way too. So anyways, that's the Ash Greninja over. So let's go into the other form of Pokemon, which I didn't get a chance to cover in the last podcast, and that is, of course, the Ultra Beast. Again, this is similar to how Type Null went with me. I was like, I see it, I go, what? I mind blank, and I'm like, wow, what is this craziness? This is definitely a new one for the Pokemon series. Alright, so this is kind of a throwback to Colosseum and Gale of Darkness from the GameCube. For anyone who has not played them, the Shadow Pokemon from these two games went by a certain title. It's similar to how the Shadow Lugia went as well in Pokemon Gale of Darkness. It went by the tag, I do believe, XD001. Similar to how the Ultra Beasts are titled UB01 for Ultra Beast 1, UB02 for Ultra Beast 2, and then again for the Ultra Beast 2 it kind of goes into a branching here based on what your game is. So you have Pokemon Sun, you have Ultra Beast 2 Absorption, and you have Pokemon Moon, you'll have Ultra Beast 2 Beauty. So kind of the more version exclusives here, similar to how the Lycan Rocks had an exclusive based on the version, and then you had like Passaman and Orangaguru were again more exclusive as well. Passaman was Pokemon Sun, Orangaguru was Pokemon Moon, so they're really trying to push their version exclusives here. Won't be without a doubt that there will be more version exclusives, which will force either people to buy both versions or trade with them. I'm assuming these things will be catchable. What Pokemon in the series has not been catchable? That's all I'm going to throw out there. It'd be a bit weird to have Pokemon introduced in the game that aren't catchable, or any type of species thrown into the game that aren't really Pokemon that you can catch. So what exactly are these? Your guess is as good as mine in regards to any of these, although I'm kind of looking at Ultra Beast Beauty, and I don't know why, but I'm seeing a Wimpod into it. I mean, it's got the same similar body shape to Wimpod, except it's got like a very feminine insect on the inside, and as I said, the Wimpod does remind me of a Trilobod, which I think if you look at it from the bottom, it was kind of like insect-like in a way. I could be incorrect there, but that's just my mind going completely wild there. As for Absorption, I did kind of look over all the Pokemon Sun and Moon Pokemon that have been revealed so far, and it's either going to be something like Vikavolt that's just gone on a crazy experiment done to it. I don't know why I thought Pick-a-Peck at first, but I'm like, nah, that's more insect-like or insectoid than more bird-like, I guess. But as I said, crazy imagination going on there. Otherwise, I was thinking something like, I know, a cutie fly. Wow, that's a bit of a unique one there. But as I said, it kind of had like the little pecky, whatever it is, horn-like thing coming over its head. But Vikavolt seemed like more of a plausible idea of what it could be. And as for Ultra Beast 1, there are so many theories going around. At the moment, all I'm going to say is I'm waiting for Pokemon Sun and Moon to find out, because these could be absolutely bloody anything. And just a little bit of backstory on them that I actually do know, so I'm not fully speculating here. The Ultra Beast is being researched on by the Aether Foundation, who I'm just going to go on about in a second. But they're researching these Ultra Beasts because they're a threat to humans and Pokemon, and they want to find out why they're a threat to Pokemon. It is kind of weird though, because on the official Pokemon website, the Ultra Beasts come underneath features, not actually Pokemon. So when it came to doing these podcasts, I wasn't sure where to throw them in. Was it the Pokemon section or the features section? But at the same time, they're a threat to Pokemon and humans. If something's a threat to Pokemon, do you consider them Pokemon? That's kind of a, I guess, philosophical question there. If they're a threat to Pokemon, do you consider them Pokemon? I'm just going to leave that question there for you guys to try and answer or give your opinions on, because as I said, I'm assuming these guys are Pokemon that you can catch. That's my speculation on it. it seems like a safe speculation, but as I said, I'll get your guys' opinion on it as well, because it is a pretty unique thing. As I said, it's something that Pokemon hasn't really seen before, outside of the Shadow Pokemon back in Gale of Darkness and Pokemon Colosseum, where you could catch as well, but you had to purify them into actual Pokemon. So unless they're doing a throwback to those particular side games, which would be bloody awesome, by the way, because they were really good games, if it's a throwback to that, will they revert into actual Pokemon, or will they be their own little entity? As I said, leave your opinions down in the comment section below, because I'd really like to hear what you guys say. And I've driven on about them enough, my brain hurts already. So we're not even like 10 minutes or so into the podcast and my brain already hurts. Good going. Anyways, let's move on to the Aether Foundation. So these guys were revealed just a little bit after Team Skull. Now, I originally did put out the question, is Team Skull really the bad guys? Or are we going to get like some other team coming out of the woodwork to be the real villains of the game? Because after even playing the demo myself, it was kind of like, I don't take these guys as villains. They're like Team Rocket. Even though they are villains, they just don't have the attitude to be villains. Mind you, we didn't really see much into them, but they didn't really have the, I guess, attitude of villains. They were kind of like street gang or street thugs, where they kind of just come up to you, they're going to say, look, we're going to take your Pokemon, and off we go. Kind of that attitude where they don't really know what they're doing. I guess that's kind of the whole feel that I got from it anyway. But anyways, these guys are supposed to be keeping Pokemon safe from the threats of Team Skull. But again, we've had teams in the past. Look at Team Plasma, for example. They had the whole ambition to go out and free Pokemon from the whole, is catching Pokemon ethical? What we really doing? Is it really ethical type of thing? They had this intention to keep Pokemon safe from actual trainers. But in the end, we all know what happens there. Turns out they had their own little twisted ambitions there. So what turned out to be something innocent turned out to be quite twisted in the end. Is this going to happen with the Aether Foundation as well? Is what looks so innocent at the beginning going to turn out to be something quite twisted at the end? Are they going to do like what Pokemon X and Y did, where they were going through talking about the whole bonds of Pokemon being so great, but then near the end of the game you found out that when AZ lost his Flodet, he ended up using the I think it was like the essence of Pokemon, absorbed that, which turned them into stone. There's a whole like graveyard where the Pokemon remains were, and they used this essence to feed the ultimate weapon. That's how it was powered, is used through the power of the Pokemon themselves, which in the end, massive genocide in a way. So is it going to be something like that? Because going back to Pokemon Treehouse, they were talking about how the whole life force was going to be kind of like the main theme of the game, where the sun gives life to things, the moon gives life to things, especially in regards to the ocean and all that. The waves or the motion of the ocean is based on like the moon and all that. So certain times the moon and all that create high tide, low tide. Sorry, as I said at that time, I'm not really knowledgeable in that area. I know more about the sun because that's what I studied in science. I don't remember much about the moon. But anyways, they were talking about all that, so it kind of ties it back to Pokemon X and Y a little bit, because I did briefly mention that in Pokemon X and Y, and it seems like there's going to be a big thing in here. Going back to point, because I did kind of digress a little bit. Anyways, their headquarters is the Aether Paradise, which is the artificially created island that you saw on the map. So dead smack bang in the middle, I do believe, is a metal island. That's their headquarters. So it does raise the question, if these guys are the villains, why have a headquarters just smack bang in the open there, whereas normally all the villains have like a headquarters that's hidden away? Again, it could be the whole like plot twist, could be the good guys, but in the end, bad guys. So their leader is Lucimen, who I do believe loves Pokemon. She loves all Pokemon, be they native or a lower region or not, which is kind of like a good thing if they were the good guys. non-biased, so if you brought whatever Pokemon to her, she would love it regardless. So that's the leader, is Luciman. And as I said, they're researching the Ultra Beast, so they've given them names, Ultra Beast 1, Ultra Beast 2, etc, etc. And they're also doing research, or they're also aware of the rare existence of the Pokemon Cosmog, and they're also conducting research on that as well. Which is why I said it's kind of strange if they're doing research on that, and yet if you go back and look at the Japanese trailer where the protagonist is actually protecting Cosmog, it's kind of like, are they really doing research to find out what it is, or are they going to be researching it for other evil deeds? As I said, there's so many questions here. It's like, I want there to be a plot twist. That's kind of why I'm going towards these, like, speculations, I guess, because in the back of my mind, I really want there to be a plot twist. I want these guys to be the villains, and Team Skull, as I said, to be like the pseudo-villains, to make it look like these guys are actually the villains, when in actual fact, they're nothing more but street thugs. Alright, so that's the Aether Foundation, that's the Ultra Beast. So let's go back to Team Skull, who I've mentioned a few times. So we've got a brand new member of Team Skull mentioned, and his name is Gladion, or Enforcer Gladion. I do believe it's how you pronounce his name. So we've got this guy, and in the story it has been confirmed he is using Type Null, who will evolve into Sivali. Now, as we discussed in the last podcast, for those who didn't tune into that, Type Null and Sivali is pretty much a tie back to Arceus with the ability RKS system, has a type called multi-attack, and its type and Sivali's type is based on an item that you give it. So if you give it like the dark type item, it'll turn into a dark type Pokemon, etc, etc. Very similar to how Arceus works, of course. So we know that he gets them, they evolve in the game, and he's an Enforcer. Now that's actually a title that I don't think we've actually seen, so I think the only way I could really explain this, or have a speculation similar to, that I can kind of link it to and say it could be similar to this, is N from Pokemon Black and White. We kind of saw N as like the villain, but here and there he's like, I don't know if what I'm doing is wrong, or if what I'm doing is right. I don't know really what I'm doing. And in the end, he's kind of like, go to the bad side, takes Reshiram and Zekrom, you battle him, and then after you battle Getsus, he's like, oh, I'm gonna go off my own way and figure out if what I'm doing is correct, and then try and find my own path. So, pretty much back to point, is Gladion going to be very similar to N, as in, he has Type Null, and he's being described as a guy who places high value in Pokemon strength, and Type Null actually evolves based on friendship, is what I'm kind of gathering. So for it to evolve, it must have some pretty decent relationship with Gladion. So if that's the case, is he actually an Enforcer out of his own, I guess, misguided directions? Is he thinking going with Team Skull will make him more powerful, or is he doing it because he actually believes what Team Skull is doing? Or what, is there like another motive of his? So that's going to be interesting. I really want him to go similar to N, because that was a very, very nice character development. Blah, there we go, English just not working. So if they do a similar arc to N, as I said, that'll be very interesting, because I did criticize heavily on Pokemon X and Y for being very two-dimensional with their characters. N definitely was one of those characters where, even though I may not have cared throughout the game when I was playing it, but when you look back on it, it's like, that's definitely very three-dimensional, because as I said, he's kind of like fighting between what he's doing. He's like questioning, is it right or is it wrong? Because he's being told that this is correct, but in actual fact, it's wrong. So ultimately, I really want Gladion to be N, but I don't know, he could end up just being full-on evil. I won't be very happy, but as I said, it'd be interesting as to how Gladion's character really turns out in the games. Alright, so I'm just going to quickly go back to like the Aether Foundation. Unfortunately, the other two characters that we've been introduced to really don't have much, I guess, character development so far. They're leaving it all for us to find out in the games. We have Faber, who is the Aether Foundation's branch chief. He is identified through his signature sunglasses, and he's very proud of his position in the Foundation. And our other character we have so far for the Aether Foundation is Wick. I think that's how you pronounce it, Wick or Wiki. She has a caring personality, makes her popular among the Foundation staff. So kind of like your typical, I guess, clerical position, I guess. Only because I've worked in a clerical position before in my recent years doing job and all that. Usually the clerks tend to be like quite a unique personality where everyone tends to really enjoy talking to them or being around. So I kind of just taking her as like a clerical thing. You kind of go talk to her first and she branches you out to other people. But as I said, that's all we really know at the moment for the Aether Foundation. So we've gone through all that so far, and as I said, there's really not too many features I have to go through, which is kind of a good thing. Hopefully not as long podcast, but I'm looking at about 21 minutes, so I'm gonna take that back. Anyways, we're gonna be introduced now to another island, Kahuna, I think it was, similar to how what's his name? Hala is. So the island, as I said, I'm pretty sure it's Island Kahana is what they're called. So we know that Hala is the Kahana or Kahuna, whatever they are, for the first island, which is the Mili Mili Island. So I'm just trying to find my notes again, I just lost them. So she's been a Kahana since a young age. She trains on mountains, maintains that she is just an average girl, and the player will eventually battle her in the grand trial of the Akala Island. She has a nose pass and an Ultra Ball, and she has Midnight Lycanroc. Other than that, no idea what she really is about. She does specialize, of course, in Rock-type Pokemon, but at the moment, that's all we really know about her. I think she was actually shown in the last trailer we got, which is all the final starter evolutions. Alright, so let's go on to some of the Z moves we've been given, because that's been quite the talk of the town so far, is the Z moves. So, for those of you who are aware, we have the Z moves broken down by type, and then we also have the Z moves based on specific Pokemon. So I'll start off with them. We have the Pikachu Z move, Catastrophica, and of course that'll be just a Z Crystal given to the Pikachu, which will allow it to use it. At the moment, we're not too sure what the required move is, and it looks like, I'm going to go into this now, the Pokemon Pacific Z Crystals will only work on certain moves. I actually had to go back and have a look at the Snorlax trailer where they mentioned if you do pick up Pokemon Sun and Moon for a certain amount of time, you'll be able to claim a Munchlax at the beginning of the game, which will come with the Snorlaxium Z Crystal, which allows it to use Pulverizing Pancake. And in the trailer, they actually showed the Snorlax using Giga Impact, kind of confirming that for these certain Z Crystals, you need to have a certain move, which means to use Pulverizing Pancake, which you can only use once per battle, you will need to teach your Snorlax Giga Impact, which may be a fun move to use, but in competitive, again, as I'm going back to the podcast where I mentioned this, it's extremely gimmicky due to how situational it is. You need to use it once, and then once you've used it, you're stuck with a move that can be quite gimmicky and situational again. Giga Impact, for those who don't know, is a high-powered move. It's similar to Hyper Beam. You launch it the first turn, you need to recharge the second turn. There's no way around that, unfortunately. So it means, as I said, you use the move, you're stuck with Giga Impact. And I'm assuming, since the fact it's coming off Giga Impact, it's going to have an amazing base power. I'd say something like 250, may even go up to the 300s as well. I haven't quite worked out the Z boost that they get from the moves, because we got a chance to see the Electrium Z being used in the Pokemon Sun and Moon demo. It went Thunderbolt, went from something like, I think it's like 90 up to 165 base power. Nuzzle went up, and I can't remember the other move that we used. We used another move, I can't remember it, I'm so sorry. Anyways, the other specific Pokemon Z Crystals we have is for the Alolan Raichu, which gets stoked Spark Surfer. We have Eevee getting its own Z move, which is Extreme Evo Boost. Now, people are going absolutely crazy on this. People are going, oh my god, Eevee OP. But I have to kind of intersect there and saying it may not be as OP as you think. In the Smogon tier for Little Cup, it will not be as effective because you need to remember you need to use this with the Z Crystal, so that means no Focus Sash. At the same time, we've been shown that when you use the Z move, that's it for your turn, so you can't knock it up with something like Protect or something. And you'll have to like live a move that turn, and you want to hope you live the next turn, because I've been seeing people saying like you use the Extreme Evo Boost with the Baton Pass. In Little Cup, that is actually officially banned. Outside of Smogon tiers, of course, it's going to be a bit hard to pull that off in the official format. You're going to need to go up against Pokemon like Mega Blaziken and all that. Kind of not going to be a fun time. Unless you're talking about ranked, even then, there's going to be a lot of Pokemon that can definitely counter the Eevee Evo Boost strategy. So good luck to trying to pull that off, but as I was going to try and focus on, definitely not going to work in official format. If you're playing free battle or for funsies with no rules and all that, yeah, that's going to be quite strong. But in regards to Smogon, there are so many things that can counter it. We have obviously our stat reducing ones like Haze, Clear Smog will counter it as well, Unaware ability will counter it as well. I'm not too sure if the Evo Boost is going to come with stats when you use the Z move. If it does, that means you won't be able to use it with Taunt or something. And since it is going off a required move, if it's going off a status move, does that mean Taunt counter it as well? So if it's going like something like Curse or something, if the Pokemon's underneath Taunt, for example, does that mean you cannot use your Z move, for example? Like little things like that. There is just so many things that can counter this one particular strategy. So I think people might be getting a little too hyped about the Extreme Evo Boost, in my personal opinion anyways. And the last one, which was shown in the last trailer, was the Guardian of Alola Z move, which all the Guardian deities get. And so what kind of happens, because I had to laugh when this happened, was a big statue comes out, big golden statue, and the easiest way to describe it is if you played Mega Man or Super Smash Bros. Using the Mega Man level, it's the Yellow Devil. So why is the Yellow Devil in the Pokemon games? That's all I can say is, I made a joke about it on Twitter as well. But it really does look like the Yellow Devil. But also having said as well, that's a really amazing move as well. It's got an awesome animation. The Gun Deity comes up. When the Gun Deity is going to like the little shell and all that, it actually makes the statue's head. So it goes on top, makes the head, and then it comes down, smashes its hand into the ground, smushing the Pokemon, very similar to Pulverizing Pancake. The Snorlax jumps in the air, wakes up and everything, jumps up in the air, smashes down into the ground, squashing whatever Pokemon it was, that poor Pokemon. Also, I'm going to just reiterate again, for those of you who pick up Pokemon Sun and Moon early, do get a Munchlax through Mystery Gifts. So you just go through and connect to internet and all that with Pokemon Sun and Moon, grab your Munchlax, it'll come to Snorlax CMZ, evolve your Munchlax, and there you go. Bella bing, bella boom, teach it Giga Impact, and you've got Pulverizing Pancake. Other than that, there's no other specific Pokemon Z moves at this point in time. I still like the idea of the specific Pokemon Z moves, especially the fact they do require a certain move to pull off. Not sure if that'll be the same for like every exclusive Z move, if they will require at least one certain move to pull off, which will kind of nerf these things down, because as I said, if it's something like Pulverizing Pancake based on a very situational move, it will kind of make people question if they actually want to run that Z move, or do they stick with using a move that will kind of be handy throughout the entire battle. So let's look at the type exclusive Z moves. So at the moment we know Breakneck Blitz, which is normally MZ. So normal, for example. All Out Pummel, which I'd assume is the fighting type Z move. Then we have a few unknown ones which I'm not too sure of. We then have Never Ending Nightmare, which is Ghost MZ or the Ghost move. Infernal Overdrive, which is Fire MZ, the fire type move. Hydro Vortex, Water MZ, which is the water type move. Bloom Doom, which by the way has some of the best moves, best sounding name. Grass MZ or the grass type move. Gigavolt Havoc, which we saw in the Pokemon Sun and Moon demo, which is Electro MZ, which is the electric type move. We then have Maxium Psybreaker, an Ultimate Dragon Burn. You can try and take their guess, Psychic and Dragon respectively. And then we have one final one, which we're not unsure what it is, because they kind of did show the name on the screen, but it hasn't quite been translated as yet. And I'm assuming that's a Dark type move. So at the moment, we're still unsure of, I think the flying type one and the few other ones. That's all I can say. I'm looking at one of the photos and it looks like a ground type move. But again, not unsure of their names. And that's, as I said, that's kind of all we know. And one final thing there on the Z moves before I move on is one thing I found out in the Pokemon Sun and Moon demo was that the Z items can be equipped to multiple Pokemon. So in the demo, I demonstrated that the Electrium Z could be given to 5 Pikachus all at once, and they could all use their Z move. So, of course, going back to the whole idea that the Z move can only be used once per battle. So even if you do give all 6 Pokemon a Z move, does that mean one particular type per battle or just a Z move in general? Is similar to how Mega Evolutions work, I guess. That's how I'm kind of interpreting it. So one Z move per battle. Otherwise, it then might be interpreting to, is it one Z move type per battle? So again, I'm kind of raising questions, or I've completely forgotten the certain wording of the Z move category. I'm kind of thinking it's one Z move per battle regardless of type. But anyways, as I said, that's kind of all we really know at the moment for the Z moves. So we have like 2 things left I can talk about, and that's the Festival Plaza and the Palago. And again, these are very, very brief in explanation because we only really got shown a little bit of it. I'm going to start with the Festival Plaza. So this allows you to connect to the Global Link, very similar to how the Entry Link worked and the Join Avenue worked in Generation 5. So if anyone played them, would know exactly how these work. And I only dabbled in this once in 5th Generation. After that, I couldn't even get the bloody thing to work. So I have very little info on those 2 alone. I think Join Avenue was Black and White 2, which I never did. I know I'll admit to that one now. Entry Link I only did once, and I do believe that allowed you to connect to the Dream World. So that's going to raise some very interesting things. So at the moment, all we really know is in the Festival Plaza, you get festival coins. They all go by rank and everything, I do believe. And you get things for doing certain deeds from what I can remember of the trailer. But that's the thing. You then have shops where you can spend your coins. So these give you like bouncy houses and die houses. They also sell sets of items as well. So bouncy houses let one of the player's Pokemon run a course in the house to raise its stats, and dyes, of course, allow the player to dye their clothing. Which is kind of a good thing, because another thing I criticise in Pokemon X and Y, I've been continuously criticising it thanks to Pokken Tournament and the short play I was doing on that, was the ability not being able to change the colour of your clothes. So you were stuck to these default clothing, and that's all you were given. Whereas now, we have the ability to have a set of clothes. Like if you like the design, you then have the option to then choose what colour it is. Finally! Sorry, I really love that option of customization in games. It's, as I said, when I was doing my Assault Calibur live stream, I kind of spent half an hour just choosing colours of my clothing and all that. I don't know, it's just something so, I don't know, hypnotizing or relaxing is just going through and then choosing colours, like choosing a fashion design and then choosing matching colours for your clothing. I don't know, I kind of seeing it now, it's going to be a feature I'm going to be spending quite a lot of hours figuring out, is my own like trainer design, something unique just to me, which, as I said, Pokemon X and Y did the first step to it. Pokemon Sun and Moon is going to make that next step, creating very unique looks for trainers, making it like their own, I guess, identity when it comes to things like this. So finally, anyways, the last thing that the Festival Plaza has is missions. So these come in certain ranks. They will opening up to people to do cooperative missions as well, to compete with visitors. Mission objectives include catching Pokemon, answering specific questions, sorry, I'm going to reword that one. They'll be asked certain types of questions asked by guests, and then global missions be held at certain times. So I'm guessing certain events that are held by Global Link, they'll give out better prizes as well. So all players around the world will work together to compete, work together to complete the first global mission will be held in late November with the goal of catch a lot of Pokemon. So that's available to everyone to participate in. The more people that participate and catch more Pokemon will probably lead into like a really good prize. And I do remember back in Pokemon X and Y when there was like, I think 2 million people who signed up with Global Link, we got the Voliberon Pokeball design. So whether that's going to end in something like that is going to be bloody amazing. So when that does start up, I do urge everyone to join in so we can get a really good prize. Alright, so that's all we have for Festival Plaza. I'm going to leave probably the best for last. Wow, English is not with me at all this entire podcast. I do apologise for that. Anyways, the last thing is the Pokepelago. This is kind of the feature I was really hoping to see, and we got something, similar to an idea that I had. Anyways, it's really a Poke Resort, so it utilises Pokemon stored in the PC, which is something, again, that we have not seen in any Pokemon game, outside of like Poke Ranch, which you could store Pokemon from your game onto Poke Ranch or the Pokemon Box. I don't know, they're kind of like Pokebank in a way, but they did allow you to do extra stuff, especially Pokemon Ranch. There's like a whole side game, you put your Pokemon into there, and you can interact with them on the ranch itself, you get really cool things, and just see how they would interact with each other like they would at the PC. Anyways, I'm digressing again. A number of small islands will make up the Pokepelago. Each has their own functions. As more Pokemon are sent to Pokepelago, more facilities and isles become more available. Oh my god, this is sounding more like Poke Ranch. Anyways, Pokepelago is washed over by Mon or something? Again, we all know I'm dyslexic, I can't pronounce words properly. So these are the certain islands that do become available to us. So obviously, when we found out about hyper training in regards to like being level 100, we're like, oh my god, there needs to be like something like the Blissey secret bases where we can level up the Pokemon quickly. Well, guess what? You have your answer to that, and that's Isle Everlup, which is one of the islands that you get given. It's an island shaped like a crescent moon. Drinks are made on this island that increase a Pokemon's stats or experience. So I'm guessing these may replace the vitamins. So like your protein, your calcium, your HP up, and all that other jazzy stuff. This may possibly replace that in total. So by stats, we're going to mean most likely EVs. There'll be 10 per drink, I'd say. Very similar to how the vitamins work. And experience. Now, whether or not this is going to be as effective as the Blissey bases is going to be another thing. How long is it going to take to level up a Pokemon using the islands? I really hope it is as effective as the Blissey base. Just to make like everyone's life easier, it will be a lot easier for the beginner players as well, which is a really good thing as well, because as I said, it will make the game more appealing if they do make things easier, but at the same time I do have to really criticize there because the game's gotten too easy. They've really forgotten about the veteran players, but as I said, I can take it with a pinch of salt there. It does make life a lot easier, especially during the hyper training, which means I can go back to 3rd generation, pick up a Pokemon from there, or even 4th generation or 5th generation, whatever I want from there, transfer the Pokemon Sun and Moon in January. I can then throw them on this island if they're not level 100, grow them to level 100, use hyper training on them, and make them like whatever IVs that I please. So I guess that's a good thing because, as I said, I don't really need to focus on leveling up in a certain gen and then transfer to Sun and Moon. The other 3 islands we get is Isle of Beans. So this one allows it, I'm guessing, very similar to Friend Safari Pokemon X and Y. While Pokemon will visit the island to eat Pokebeans, if the Pokemon likes the player indicated by the heart thought in the bubble, it may join your party, and I think as well it will show you what nature it is. And it may show you some other things as well, but I do remember a little screenshot showing the Pokemon's nature and what type they were and all that. So I'm not sure if it'll actually bring up another screen showing if it's got like any hidden abilities and all that with it. I'm really hoping it's a combination of Friend Safari and DexNav, where you can get hidden abilities and then DexNav, like allowing them to have certain amount of IVs, their egg moves and all that. As I said, if it's a combination of Friend Safari and DexNav, I'm laughing. I will use that to the end of days. Makes it easy for breeding and makes it easy for mostly breeding. I can't think of any other examples. I mainly use Friend Safari and DexNav for breeding. Alright, so the other two that we get is Isles are fun. So this must be unlocked to use. The Pokemon on this island will search for rare items such as evolution stones, heart stones, and float stones. There we go, we have a nice easy answer to how to get the evolution stones. Just use this. I wasn't really a big fan of having to farm the evolution stones through super trading, so at least we got a nice little alternative option here, which is absolutely brilliant. The last one is of course the berry growing island, and the only thing, well, it's kind of self-explanatory. We grow berries on this island, so want a way of like bringing up a big stock of berries? Just berry grow them. We've had that ability now for quite a few gens. Kind of glad they haven't taken it away. If they make it as effective as they did in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, again, that'll be brilliant. If they do what they did in Pokemon X and Y, I can't really complain too much. We still got the ability to grow items, get duplicate items for berries, grow them up, use them in our Pokemon, especially items, berries like Citrus Berry, Orange Berry for Little Cup, Citrus Berries of course for VGC or any Pokemon for the Smogon format, Lychee Berry, Salic Berry, Potato Berry, Apricot Berry, and I always forget the last one, but they tend to be the berries I use the most. The only other one I may use here and there is Custard Berry, but other than that, there's not really too many other berries that I will use, unless of course I bring back Pokemon contests, and then I will be using a lot more berries to get my Pokeblocks. But anyways, that's pretty much, I think, everything. The only other one I think I can really mention is the other trial captain that was mentioned, and that was Ilma, I think that's how you pronounce their name, and they will appear in Verdant Cavern. This was shown, I think in one of the trailers very briefly, and they specialize in normal type Pokemon. Hopefully I mentioned something new there because I completely forgot. And we do know for a fact he's at the Milimili Island, and Mallow is at the Akala Island, which I do believe is the second island. Milimili, of course, is Hallow's Island, and Akala Island is Olivia's Island. And the other three trial captains we've been introduced to at the moment, we still don't know what their islands are. Alrighty, so I think that's it. I think that's everything I need to talk about. Otherwise, as I said, if I find something that I really need to talk about, there will be a separate podcast or whatever. I'll mention it somehow. But as I said, this is probably the last podcast I will be talking about. I will say one thing though before I end off, and I do have to already criticize Pokemon Sun and Moon. This is going to sound weird. Even though I do enjoy doing these podcasts, I do have to criticize Pokemon Sun and Moon for how much info has been released already. I will admit, I do enjoy finding out things for myself. And as I said, while I have enjoyed doing these podcasts and learning about the game, getting hyped about it, it is a positive, but at the same time, I can't help thinking it still would have been fun finding out this stuff on my own. Like the Ultrabeast, for example, it would have been like, whoa, what's this? Like how I did with the island, I think like Mesprit, Azelf, and Uxie in 4th gen. Like you're introduced to their cry in 4th generation, and I was like, oh my god, like what's this? This is really cool. I want to find out what that is. And you end up finding out later on. There's like so many other examples I could probably use, but there's so many in my head at the moment. It's like, oh. But that whole idea of discovery and trying to find out for yourself, going through, catching the Pokemon, finding out their type, what they learn and all that, was one of the main reasons why I've enjoyed all the games up until, I say now, where this has been the most information ever given for a Pokemon game. They did get out quite a bit of info Pokemon X and Y, but there was still enough undiscovered that it still made discovering the Pokemon quite fun. Rose and Pokemon Sun and Moon, we've already had something like nearly 50 Pokemon revealed. I'm like, it would have been fun to discover that on my own. But as I said, it has been fun speculating on all these things, so I guess it's kind of like I'm torn halfway there where I've enjoyed finding out what we've got, and also thinking I would have preferred to have found that out myself. I don't know if that's the same for anyone else, but hey, as I said, I'm hyped. I guess that's kind of what it's wanted to achieve. But anyways, guys, that's it for me in regards to the Pokemon Sun and Moon podcast. I will be doing a few more podcasts, but it will not be Pokemon Sun and Moon related. To what it will be, I will leave a secret for now. But anyways, guys, until next time, this is Lady KrimZen saying ciao for now, but not forever. Ciao!